Well, guess what else we got, folks, here?
Woohoo!
Woohoo! We got Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp.
We do. We got Johnny Depp.
You look a little different there, Captain Jack.
How lucky are you guys to get me in from France and England?
Yeah, forget about it. So, guys, as you've probably figured out now, we got Joe Pistone, the Donnie Brasco.
Absolutely.
And it was funny because I was just looking at the T-shirts you were signing out there for a lot of folks, and you got the "Forget About It,"
Yeah, the Forget About It T-shirt for the Southern California Gang Conference.
Well, you were just saying, how many years have you been coming out here now?
Since the inception. This will be my, we missed a year because of COVID. This will be my 11th year.
Well, how did you get started in this in the first place? I mean, you owe somebody a favor?
They made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
What do you think? We're back on the streets with the wise guys? You owe somebody a favor?
Hey,
all I can remember is getting a call from Mel Souza, who initiated this conference. And he got my name from an FBI agent that he knew here in San Diego. Wanted to know if I'd come out and be a guest speaker. And I said, definitely. I said, what's the program? And he told me it was the Southern California Gang Conference, and all the proceeds went to the widows of fallen officers. And I said, you can count me in on it. Just give me a date and I'll be there. And so I came out and spoke for a few hours, and then come back every year since, and did breakout sessions, and also helped out with whatever needed to be done, like carrying the water around, placing, because it's a great cause. I mean, and I do a lot of these events, and nobody here gets a salary. I mean, all these
volunteer,
these police officers are doing it on their own time. And what better situation can you be in than to help out fallen officers' families?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I was impressed too. Last year, you saw the check that they had up when they had the barbecue. They donated. I think it was $128,000 last year.
Yeah,
and that was in a down year. I mean, you're coming back from COVID and stuff. Yeah,
it was a bad year because the year before was COVID. They didn't have the event.
And remember, they kind of threw that one together, and then we missed you last year because I think you said like COVID, feeling ill or something.
Yeah, well, I come down with the flu.
Yeah,
I had come off. I was up in Northern California doing a police conference, and man, I come down with the flu that put me in bed for a week, and everybody said, well, you got COVID. I went to the emergency room and said, you got the old-fashioned flu, boy. That's what you got. You're not lucky enough to get the COVID. You got the old-fashioned flu.
Well, if anybody was getting sick at that time, it was like, oh, it's COVID. It's like, oh.
Well, that's what it was. Everybody's,
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm going to the emergency room. And I went to the emergency room and said, nope, you got the flu.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you're down here with your wife. And who did your wife bring?
My daughter. But my daughter's been coming for the past 4 years.
She has, yep.
Yeah. She retired Army colonel, veterinarian, and she started to come with us, and she loves the event because she's very pro law enforcement, being
she's
a 20-some years in the military. Well, you spent time with her.
She has a great sense of humor.
Oh man, and she is just so engaging. She was sitting up in the back row when the things were kicking off, and she's there with your wife. And, it was just, I mean, good family affair too.
Yeah, well, she still thinks she's a colonel in the Army,
So she bosses you around a lot?
Do you say yes, ma'am?
Yeah, well, I noticed she didn't make you salute this time.
Well, that's because I told her, don't embarrass her in front of my friends,
Well, we talked on the episode, but there was something we were talking about yesterday, and I want to kind of get into it too, because it's kind of the behind-the-scenes stuff, but it's something I know, Murph, you've run into with a number of people asking you to do documentaries, you know, and part of the thing was what's the fascination with it? So, I mean, you were counting, how many documentaries have been done?
My goodness, I tell you, I can't count how many documentaries I've done on the mafia and on undercover and on my 6 years infiltrating the mafia and on undercover. And, you know, the story doesn't change, you know. And like I said, and what fascinates me is how many English production companies from England, produce documentaries on the mafia. And again, I've probably done maybe 30, 40, and my story doesn't change. I mean, you know, what I know about the mafia doesn't change. What I know about undercover doesn't change. And my 6 years undercover infiltrating the mafia doesn't change.
Well, here's a shocker for you. Every time Murph does his presentation, Pablo always dies.
Does he?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh, sorry. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler.
We should have told you that, Joe.
My God.
Damn.
You mean I'm going to watch another one and think he gets away? But I think I think it was you in that
Talking about the generational
conversation.
thing. Yeah.
Talking about the generational aspect of it. And that's why they keep making them.
There's a whole new generation of viewers out there. And that's the same thing with Pablo, right, Murph? It's like, why is there still... I mean, I can't tell you how many people will get on the Facebook page or something and say, hey, I just saw Murph on another documentary. And it's like, okay, guys, we've established Pablo's dead. Well, I mean...
It never changes. Well, you know, I mean, you guys know this is our 8th year traveling around the world telling the same story. And I'm running into people here, especially, you know, at this conference, because this is our 4th or 5th year here. And, you know, they're like, I heard you last year. And I'm said, listen, it's the same story. It's the same jokes. I haven't changed a thing. You know, grab a pillow if you're coming in here.
But I will tell you, though, I was there, and you saw it too, standing room only, both times. I mean, you had people going, I had to go run down a couple of the folks and get extra chairs because there were people that just packing the house. They wanted to hear the story. So
the most important thing about yesterday is that I had more people in my breakout than Lou Velosi.
Yeah.
They're clap to that. But the same thing. I mean, you know, in the breakouts, and a lot of times you have repeat people, but they still want to, you know, they still enjoy or like to hear the story, you know.
For them, it's training, though. But there's an old saying that says training's like bathing. Neither one's permanent. You said just because you heard the story one time, you got to come back and hear the extra nuance.
Right. And a lot of people tell you, you know, I heard you last year, but I just picked up on something. Did you say this last year? And seriously, this is the same presentation over and over. Yeah. The time difference is the only difference, the length.
I agree with you. And like all day, I've been getting questions on when you're going to do your main presentation on the stage, you know?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I did the breakout sessions. I'm not going to be on, you know, one of the main presenters on the stage. And it was like, wow, we thought you were going to be one, you know. But I think, like you said, it's a generational thing. These types of stories, the mafia and the cartels, people are fascinated by it.
Yeah, there's some kind of an allure to them. It's people want to live vicariously. They look at the power, the money, the things that you could do.
How can somebody get away with that kind of thing?
Yeah, I found out, this is my take on the fascination of the American mafia, is that the average person watching a movie about the mafia on their television or on the big screen, and they see these guys, let's face it, it's scripted, right? The movies are scripted. So they see these guys with, you know, $1,000, $2,000 suits. They see them driving around in nice cars. They all got a big flash roll, you know, and they live in palatial estates. It always amazes me that when they show their offices, they're all palatial office. In reality, not everybody in the mafia is living in a palatial estate. They don't all have big flash rolls, okay? And their clubs are, the back room of a bar or a candy store. It's not like it is in the movies. And but the average Joe Blow, right? He has to, and they don't see these guys ever working. They don't ever see him working. But the average Joe, what does he do? He gets up in the morning and he goes to work. He works 8-10 hours a day. Mm-hmm. He comes home, right? And what's he do? He sits on his couch, has his beer martini. But then what's he do on the weekend? He's mowing the lawn. He's running to Home Depot. He's fixing stuff around the house. But in these mafia movies, you never see these guys doing that, right? So that's how they get their, relaxation and live through this mafia guy who they think has this great life.
Live vicariously.
In reality, these guys got the same life, other than that most of them don't work and, they get their money from stealing. But they got the same problems. Every one of them isn't walking around with a big flash roll with money. They got wives that may be a pain in the arse. They got kids that may be a pain in the arse, just like Joe Blow sitting home.
And kids need braces. They got to go to the doctor. Hey, but something interesting. So drill down on that a little bit, because in the movie Donnie Brasco, you got Al Pacino there who's sponsoring you. But it just when you said that, it made me hit it. He was like anybody else. He was just a poor little schmuck. He might have been a made guy, but he's waiting there for the big boss to show up. They got to go out and earn. Mm-hmm. It was a dog-eat-dog world. I mean, it's like if you didn't earn, every day was like you get the rent. You got to pay the rent, and the rent is due every day. You got to go out and earn it.
That's exactly right. And the way the mafia works is everything flows uphill to the boss. So if you're an associate, you got to kick into your maid guy who's responsible to you. The maid guy has to kick into his captain who he's responsible to, and then the captain in the organization has to kick up to the boss. And they don't care where you get the money, and you have to pay it every week.
Wow.
So and that's what they don't show you on in the movies, and I think that's the fascination, is that Joe Blow is living through what he thinks wise guys or mafia guys everyday life is like.
Well, that's if you just kind of change out what you said there. So it's like take Joe Blow. He goes, so you got a maid guy who's got to go out 8 to 10 hours a day. He's working the street collecting, right? And he still goes home to it's not Tony Soprano, dude. He doesn't have a 5-car garage with Maseratis. He's got a beat up car. I mean, even the fun one too. I think you said this was accurate, right? Like in the movie when Al Pacino says, "Hey, I need what did you call it? He needs a not a bump, but
C note.
He need money from you, even though he could afford it." Like he said, you went over to the apartment and he said, "Hey man, can you give me a pinch or a Grinch or something?" I forgot what the name of it was. He wanted some money from you, just which he would never pay you back.
I think are you talking about the Christmas present when I gave him an envelope and I had $200 in it, and he gave me an envelope with $200 in it, and then as I'm leaving his apartment, he says, "Hey Donnie, can you give me that beaner back?
Yeah,
can I borrow that beaner back from you?" It's like, you just gave it to me as a Christmas present,
And then he gets the money back. But hey, but you've also mentioned something yesterday too. It was kind of a point of frustration for you, and I think it's the same thing with you, Murph. You reach a point where it's kind of like, guys, we can't do this for free. A lot of these production companies or a lot of these people want you to do everything for free.
Yeah, and Murph can relate to this. Is we have that government mentality, being agents, Murph being DEA, myself being FBI, and even police officers, you have that mentality that this is your salary and this is what it is, and you get out and people come to you and you still got that government mentality that you don't realize that there's money to be made besides being on the job. And I know I used to get, in the beginning, I'd get requests to do a documentary, and I'd do it. And they say, well, we're going to pay for your airfare, put you up in a nice hotel, and buy you a meal, Well, in the government, your airfare was riding in the cargo, But here, hey, we're gonna put you in business class. Whoa, we're gonna go.
That's a big
business
deal.
class, right?
That's a big deal.
That's a big deal, and you're gonna be the suite. You're traveling with the government. You're in a 8x10 room.
Motel 6, sharing it with another agent. Yeah,
you're down in the basement.
And your meal money is $35 a day.
And you had that tax form, so you didn't have to pay tax on the hotel room.
You had to fill out the tax form to give to the hotel guy, so you didn't have to pay the government. I mean, it was like nuts. So whoa, this is really, I'm in high heaven here. And then you start talking to people, and did you get paid for that? No, they gave me a business class ticket. They put me up in a suite. They paid me. What are you, crazy? Well, I don't know. Then you realize, hey, somebody's making money off of this. They're not doing this for nothing.
Yeah. So
then you get another call, and I know what I did. I had a good friend that was in the movie business, and he's the one that straightened me out. He said, Joe, you don't do this for nothing, because everybody's making money. Everybody's making money. So I would say, well, if you want me to do it, here's my price. Oh, we don't pay for documentaries.
I heard the same thing.
Right?
Yep.
And I would say, well, okay, so that means you're not getting paid. Oh, yeah, I'm getting paid. Well, you just said you don't pay for documentaries. Oh, no, we don't pay
talent.
The guest.
Yeah.
I said, well,
without the guest, do you have a documentary?
No, you don't.
I would say, well, without me, what do you got?
That's right.
Go get somebody else that spent 6 years, undercover with the mafia, and you're making a documentary about.
I was going to say, you worked the mob long enough. You should have known everybody gets their get, man.
Everybody has to get their beak wet, as they say in the mob, right? I got to get my beak wet. So, if they want you, they'll pay. And, I did probably the first 3 or 4, on short change. And then after that, it was, you're going to pay me what I ask you, or get somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And who else are they going to get? I mean, that's the thing. It's what you do is you end up with a second or third rate, and I don't want to say agent, but somebody. It just reminded me, too, of when we interviewed Dave Reichert from the Green River Killer.
Right.
And when they did a documentary, he refused to be on one of them because he said, you wanted to glorify Gary Ridgway. You needed to be about the victims. So they said, well, okay, they didn't use him, but they used one clip of him. But he is the main person, but yet they did this documentary. And they're talking to all these other people. And it wasn't the investigator. It's like talking to an admin person about Donnie Brasco. It's like, why don't we just talk to Donnie Brasco? Oh, because we didn't want to pay Joe Pistone. So we got the janitor who happened to be working one night that heard them talking about the case.
That made the arrest. Who was there when they made the arrest about the
Yeah.
But and it's funny because I get a lot of phone calls from retired guys, agents and police officers. Oh, I got a call from a producer in Hollywood, wants to do my story. And, the first thing I ask him, well, give me the guy's name. And I find out the guy's a third-rate actor. Because everybody in Hollywood's a producer, right? And I tell him, the guy's never produced anything. He hasn't even been in a movie that was, anything but a third-rate movie, but some guys fall for it.
Yeah.
Because producer, Hollywood. And then again, you get calls. They want me to do, interview, and I said, well, don't do it for nothing.
Right.
And then you get the thing. They'll call me back and say, well, they don't want to pay me. And you relive it all. Well, here's what they want to give you: a good plane ride, and they want to give you a suite, right? Yeah. Ask them if they're getting paid. So I give them the same spiel that I went to for the first 3 times. But some guys, I mean, I'm sure you had this, Murph. Some guys don't take your advice,
right?
Because I don't know what it is, but I'm going to be on camera. I'm going to be on a documentary. And then after it's over, they don't realize that you don't, and they tell you you're only being interviewed for an hour. There's no interview that takes an hour. By the time they set up the lighting, by the time they sit you where they want you to sit, by the time they go through all the preliminaries, you're there all day.
Yeah. That's what, even in Narcos, Javier and I we got like a 4-second cameo appearance at the end of season 2. We were in that bar for 8 hours in Bogota. Yeah. And they had Pedro, they were filming a scene with him also. But I had it's amazing. I have the same experiences as you where agents call and friends. And they're like, man, they want to pick up my book, so they're flying me out to Hollywood, and this is the guy that made this movie, or he was the, second executive assistant to whoever, and I just want to see what advice you got. And the first advice is, do you have a Hollywood attorney? Don't get a Washington attorney. Don't get an Atlanta attorney. Get somebody
in Hollywood. Don't get your real estate attorney.
Exactly. Exactly. And one day, I'm not going to mention any names here, but because I really don't like the guy, but it's a funny story. He was being interviewed about Narcos Mexico. And he did have an integral part in it down there. And he called me and he says, listen, how much do you get paid? And I said, well, we signed a non-disclosure agreement. I can't tell you that. Well, I've already told him I'm not doing it for less than $1 million.
I know who you're talking about now. Oh, my God.
And I busted out laughing. He's like, what's so funny? You didn't get $1 million? I'm like, dude, are you kidding? I said, let me tell you this, and this is the truth. Between what they paid me for each, 2 seasons of Narco, what you got paid per year, combined with my retirement check from DEA, I made more money working as an agent.
Yeah, that's what everybody thinks that, I get the calls on the books, and everybody thinks that they're going to become millionaires off their book.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, first of all, and not to disrespect you, but your story's not national. You don't have a national story.
Yeah.
Okay? Don't expect police officers and your buddies to buy your book.
Right.
Because what it is, hey, you got a book for me to sign? You got the book? Oh, no, I thought you'd give me one.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you don't know how many, and I'm sure, Murph, you get the same thing. I get more emails from friends of mine that, hey, I told my neighbor about you, and I'd like to give him a book. Can you send me one?
Yeah. Or can you send me an autographed picture of you on the roof? Well, no, I don't have those.
Yeah.
It was funny because we were with the folks we were hanging out with yesterday, which some of them are going to be on the podcast. Some have already been on the podcast. But, they're like, wow, you got that picture, Murph? And I'm like, at dinner last night, I pulled it up on the internet.
Yeah,
I don't carry that picture around with me.
Yeah, I mean, it's. But, like I say, everybody thinks that they're going to make $1 million off their book.
Yeah.
And I tell them, you're lucky. Let me tell you something. You're lucky if you get a $10,000 advance off of your story.
Yeah.
And if you don't make it back, you'll never get anything published again. You got to make your advance back for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what they don't realize is like my first book. I had a ghostwriter. And I was lucky in that I had a good deal. I got a good deal because I had friends in the business, and I come up with a good. It's funny because the first book we sat down with every major writer that wrote mafia books, and every one of them was like, well, you got to do A, B, C, and D. I said, well, A, B, C, and D is not part of my story. Well, you'll never sell that book. You'll never sell that. You never sell that book because you got to have sex. You got to have this about the wise guy. I said, well, there was none. I'm not going to talk about wise guys and girlfriends, and that's got nothing to do with it. You'll never sell it. So I finally, and believe me, these were name authors, you know. And I said, no, forget it. I'm passing.
Did you just say forget about it?
Forget about it.
Forget about it.
That's what he told them.
That's what I did. And you know, not to mention names, but I'm talking about New York Times best-selling authors. Mm-hmm. But it was going to be their book. And then I finally hit upon Richard Woodley, who had written a nonfiction about drug dealers. And he said, this is your book. So I just dictated, you know, and then he put it into book form.
So how impressed were you with his work? I mean, obviously the book got published, but it seemed like he got it, right? Do you feel like he captured everything the way you wanted it?
Definitely. Yeah. Because, again, like he said, this is not my book, this is your book. All I'm doing is put it into proper form. Mm. You know, and so I was lucky there. And like I say, I was lucky with the movie because a good friend of mine, high school friend of mine, may rest in peace, was one of the top casting directors in Hollywood at the time. And he hooked me up with the right people. And the screenwriter was a great guy. And he wrote a great screenplay.
Well, and that's the thing too. I mean, at that time, Al Pacino was a bigger name than Johnny Depp, but Johnny Depp, you know, up and coming. But did you get any insight or say? Not that you were the final decision maker, but did you get to weigh in on who was going to play who? Were they the right people, or did they run any of the? Hey, here's who we're going to put. Here's who we want for this part.
Yeah, they ran guys by me, but you know, and they. At the time, every A-listed actor wanted to do the part. Every A-listed actor wanted to do the part.
Which part was the more interesting one for them? Was it Al Pacino's role or Johnny Depp's role, or were they kind of even?
Johnny Depp's role. Yeah.
Well, that says a lot about your story then.
Yeah, Johnny Depp's role, yeah.
Was he the right person for that role?
We turned out to be, didn't he?
He did a fantastic job.
He turned out to be. He wasn't the when Barry Levinson, who bought my book rights to the movie, he got Paul Antonazio, who was the screenwriter, and he got it right, and then he sent it out to, like I say, every top listed actor. And you know, actors, well, I think this scene should be, and to Barry Levinson's credit, he said, I'm not changing it. He said, this is what he did.
This is Joe's story, it's not fiction.
Yeah, you know. And he picked Al. He sent it to Al for Lefty. And it was several months before Al finally committed. I mean, he loved the script and everything. And then, to his credit, he said, you know, I don't know Johnny Depp, he said, but he's a terrific actor. He said, you ought to send him the script.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because we always thought Johnny Depp was too young.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he's too good looking. I mean,
come on, Joe, you looking good, brother. Come on, man.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, he's you know.
And you had hair back then.
Yeah, I did have hair back then.
Oh, now here comes Mr. Smart Aleck over there.
No, he's right. And he really hadn't done any any movies that were this really sick, you know.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is a major leading
But
role
everybody knew he was a great actor, and so they sent it to him. He read the script, and man, he was right in, and he nailed it, and Al nailed it. In fact, Al Pacino should have got the best actor that year. I forgot who got it, but he was up for and then later on, actually, the person who got it said it should have went to Al.
Wow.
For his portrayal of Lefty.
And there was one other interesting thing you said, too, is that even with your book, even years later, you're still getting a couple royalty checks a year. People are still buying it.
I can't believe it. I mean, that book came out in '88, and it's still selling.
Wow.
It's a gift that keeps on giving.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's, like my agent said, I can't. He says, I got authors that, they're not getting their royalty checks from books that they were, written in 1988. It still sells. Crazy. And
That's
the
fantastic.
movie. And the same thing with the movie. They say it has legs. That movie's on all the time. Like, I'm still getting checks for the movie. The movie came out in '97.
Dang.
Nice.
Well, I know who's buying drinks tonight, Murph.
There you go.
Well, it's out of the house because we're going to a mixer. So you can have all you want.
Yeah.
Well, hey, look, I mean, we just wanted to do a quick catch up with you, and it was good to hear that. But it's like, I did not see, there's an interesting thing. I did not know Al Pacino sent the script, said you got to send it to Johnny
he was
Depp.
the one.
Oh.
He wasn't as. I mean, Depp was on the list, but they figured,
Somebody else probably would have taken it before Depp had they just gone that route, right? But Al kind of made Johnny go to the top of the list.
Really, they thought Johnny was really too good looking for. Not when I say good looking, I mean not rugged enough.
Yeah.
But he nailed it, man. I mean, there's nobody that could have done it. I mean, after you see him, and like I spent months with him before, and it was like, whoa. And in fact, one time on a set, my mother was on set, and Johnny's walking away from her, and she thought it was me. She's calling me. She thought it was me.
Wow.
Because he
had your mannerisms
yeah.
down?
he had to walk down and everything. Yeah.
Holy cow.
Oh, man.
That's a good actor.
Yeah, and he's such an, I tell you what, he's such a good-hearted guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, we still keep in touch. I'm good friends with his sister. I keep in touch with his sister. And tell you the kind of guy he is. Right after the movie came out, a year later, my wife comes down with cancer, right? So our good friend Lou DiGiamo, who was the casting director I went to high school with, and Lou has passed now, calls him and says, hey, Johnny, Joe's wife just got diagnosed with some pretty bad cancer, right? I get a phone call. He called me Pistola. That's what he calls me. He said, Pistola. Yeah, what's up, Johnny? He says, why don't you tell me that your wife has cancer? I said, well, he said, I'm going to tell you right now. He said, wherever she has to go, I don't care where, I'll send a plane, I'll fly her there, wherever you need to take her to get treatment, I'll make sure she gets there, and we'll take care of everything.
Wow.
That's the kind of guy he is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Well, so let's get you and Johnny on the podcast, and we'll revisit Donnie Brasco.
He just, I got a text, he just fractured his ankle.
Oh. Well, perfect time to do a podcast.
Yeah,
He's
right.
rehabilitated.
That's it. That's it.
But the sad thing is that, he's with the band, the Hollywood Vipers.
Yeah.
And they had a tour.
Oh, yeah.
They had a tour up in on the East Coast, but they canceled it because his doctor told him he can't
be on that. Can't put pressure on that ankle.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I love the idea.
Yeah.
We can talk to him about playing Joe Pistone. We talk about him what it's like to play law enforcement in a movie.
And then we could also say, and this is the day we almost interviewed Captain Jack Sparrow.
There you go. I love it. That's still my favorite movie. Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Love that
He
stuff.
did that so well. All right, Joe. Well, buddy, we're going to get back to letting you sell T-shirts and books.
Well,
we're going to get
thank
back
you.
to the conference.
And thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. You guys are doing a great job.
Thanks, brother.
And yet, this will actually be, Murph, I think this will be our final interview from the gang conference.
And we saved the best for last.
We started with the best and we end with the best. We started with Joe Pistone, your mentor, and we're going to end with Mr. Bob Mazur, who's got his new book out, The Betrayal, The True Story of My Brush with Death in the World of Narcos and Launderers.
Yeah, baby.
And that follows on your book, The Infiltrator, which we talked about in your first interview.
Yeah, it was a second UC operation I did about 3 years after the Infiltrator story.
Well, let's talk of this one. This today, your presentation was a little unique because one of the subjects of your book actually happened to be here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if our listeners could see him right now, he's got the biggest shit-eating grin on his face.
Well, but let's set context. This was the guy who dimed you out to the Colombians, Guzman.
Right.
And he came on stage. He talked. I'll give him credit for showing up. But I mean, I was very upfront. I said he, to me, played the victim card too much. It's like I was a victim. I was going to shoot myself. I was going to do this. But at the end of the day, it's still unconscionable what he did to you. Mm-hmm. But the interesting thing was, though, you had the opportunity to come out right after him and basically rebut a lot of the stuff. So, I mean, just kind of tell us that part of it, how that was coming down here and in a sense, confronting him for the first time.
And before you do, Bob, if I can just insert, and please correct me if I get this wrong, but I want to set the context for our listeners in that here you are in a long-term undercover, years-long undercover, going after the financial side of the Medellin cartel. You are working hand in hand with this guy who you've trusted with your life, a fellow law enforcement officer who goes rogue, who, as you're going undercover in Colombia, which hadn't been done for years and years and years because of the danger factor, at the same time, he's telling the bad guys in Tampa, don't deal with the guy from Sarasota, which was you, because you were a cop. And the bad guys in Colombia are saying he can't be a cop because he's down here and DEA wouldn't send a cop down here. Is that all true?
Yeah. The timing was, well, it was the Cali cartel in the second one, but yeah, it's true that when I was in Colombia, and I knew that they would assume that I wasn't a Fed if I showed up there, because it was well known in the drug circles that DEA wasn't letting anybody go to Colombia undercover. But I talked to my boss, Mike Powers, who has a way of persuasion for people at headquarters. And I convinced Mike that it would be really important for me to be able to show up there because there were these rumblings about whether or not I was a Fed. And so we got it authorized, and I get to go down there. He had already outed me. Guzman had already outed me before I got there. But when I got there, and Louis Latore, who was the Cali money launderer, was so shocked, he called, and I got this because I interviewed Latore after we arrested him. And he said, when you showed up, I just said, well, he can't possibly be a federal agent. So I called Antonio, that's the undercover name that Guzman was using, and he said words to the effect of, maybe he went down on his own, but I'm telling you, he's a DEA agent.
Man.
He had trouble saying that today. That's the only question I asked him. What was the conversation between you and Louis when I was in Colombia? And he hemmed and hawed, and the audience really picked up on that.
So the other thing we didn't tell people is he presented, then you presented, and then you both were on stage together.
Yes.
How was that?
I was doing really well with it until this morning when I woke up. And I said, I never thought I'd go on stage with a guy who nearly got me killed. But then the whole goal of this is to share experiences with active law enforcement officers who can get valuable takeaways and gain things that will keep them safer. And so for that reason, I was driven to want to do it. And I didn't really. I'm glad my wife didn't come because she's very transparent. She would have punched him in the nose, and she always says, do you realize you were 3 minutes away from not getting to dance with your daughter at her wedding?
Oh man, that drives it home, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So tell us about that. What is that scenario? You were 3 minutes away from.
Yeah. So Louis Latore had a real problem. He had lost $3 or $4 million of the Cali cartel's money. And he was dealing directly with people like Pacho Herrera. And so he had no choice but to continue to launder. And he was having to do it for basically free to try to pay back what he owed. And so what he and I guess Guzman came up with was, well, if we know when the DEA is going to end the undercover operation and we don't have money in the pipeline, you'll be able to launder money. And one thing I didn't bring out is Willie coached them on how to do a money drop to us without having leads that we could follow, because what he coached them to do is they put the money in a bus station locker. Then they went to a hotel, rented a room. One of the sisters gave a note to the guy at the desk and said, a guy by the name of so-and-so is going to come here. When he does, please give him the envelope with this note in it. So then they deal over the phone with RUC, and they say, go to the desk of the hotel and get the envelope. And he gets the envelope, and it says, Greyhound bus station, such and such, locker, whatever, and the key's in there. Well, there's not too many leads you can get off that. And we called them dead drops. But Louis said, he came up with a great plan for us to be able to do these dead drops. And so Louis had to continue to work with somebody to launder money, or he was going to get killed. So he came and met me. I had an office in Panama City, Panama. He came and met me. By this time, I'm really suspicious about whether or not Guzman had outed me. Latore shows up. He's really nervous. He stays for 30 minutes. He says he wants to get back in business with us, blah, 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 blah. And then he leaves. After we take the case down, one of the women, the sisters of the informant, who said they had a physical relationship with Guzman, said...
Which was something he didn't bring out either, did he?
No, and he denied it. That seemed to be important for him to deny, because his wife was there, and, that's a minor point, kind of. But the sister of the informant, we debriefed, and she said, oh, yeah, when Louis came to see you, he flew in on his private plane into Punta Patilla. He was met by 3 guys in Panama, all of whom are hit guys. They all had machine guns. And he told them if he wasn't back at the car by X time, that they should go into that room and kill everybody other than him that was in the room, because the only reason he wouldn't be out would be because DEA had arrested him. So,
jeez.
3 minutes before the witching hour, he showed back up at the car. So they didn't come in. But I had no idea that was going on.
And you mentioned when you were up on stage 2, at some point you said you suspected there was a rat. What was your first indication that, and you didn't know it was Guzman at the time, but what was your first indication that we've got a mole, that we've got a leak from inside our unit?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny that even before the operation started, my partner from the prior operation when I was at Customs, Amir Abreu, best undercover agent in the world, amazing agent, amazing. And so I told him I'm going to be doing a DEA money laundering thing, and they got this kid to work with me, and would he mind kind of telling him what it was going to be like, because this kid had never done a money laundering undercover operation. And he goes, well, who is he? And I said, no, it's Willie Guzman, Officer of the Year. He goes, brother, we got to meet. You're going to get effing killed. And so I met with him. Now, Amir was doing an undercover. He had in Tampa, he had a money service business in the Latin community. And so he was going to a lot of the Colombian clubs and those types of things. And he would see Guzman with these informants who happened to be targets of Amir's investigation. And he said, listen, that's not a cop informant relationship. There's stuff that's going on. And so I said to him, would you go and see Mike Powers? And he said, well, I'll just have to get the approval of my office. And so, because, I mean, you're going to start throwing mud at the officer of the year in the entire city.
Right.
You know, you want to make sure you get blessed before you go over and say those things. So he went to my old boss, who I didn't have a very good relationship, but now I was in DEA, so that didn't matter. And when he asked to go, the bosses there said, F. Mazur, he's in DEA now. He's on his own.
Oh.
Yeah. So Amir went on the QT and talked to Mike. And Mike is a guy who, everything is black and white. There's no gray. And this kid had made a lot of cases for the office. He was highly, highly regarded. And rumors and innuendo wasn't going to change the game. So I unfortunately had a concern about him way early. So my decision was, because Mike said to me, well, you know, Bob, you're going to have one of two choices. You're either going to do the UCOP with Willie, or you're not going to do it at all. And I said, well, and as I confessed to the audience today, by this stage, undercover for me, information had become my heroin. I had been the prior operation. I mean, I'd get info, and 3 days later we'd seize a ton of coke, and I'd get more info, and we'd seize $2-3 million, and then I'm inside of the biggest bank that we were ever able to take down for money laundering, and I'm finding out about where Manuel Noriega's dirty money accounts are located in Luxembourg, and I'm finding all kinds of stuff. And every time I got something like that, for me, the next piece that I got had to be bigger than the piece before. Mm-hmm. And I almost needed to take more of a risk in order for it to be as fulfilling as the last one was. And the thought of not doing the undercover operation at DEA was like that was a non-starter for me.
That's a no-go.
That's a no-go. I'm going to do it. So my theory at that time was, I just got to keep this kid close to me. As long as I keep him close to me, and as long as this case is going to show him to be a superstar, I think I'm going to be okay. So I talked to my wife, and I said, hon, I know you're going to think this is crazy, but Amir thinks he's dirty. It may be, but I want to have him over for dinner. Now, I was living under another name because of the contract from the prior case. And so we had him over, and we broke bread together, his wife, me, my wife, and him. And it really, in the end, I mean, that my wife can't, that's why it's probably a good thing she's not here, because she can't fathom even looking at the guy. I just feel as though he potentially is, you know, if there's one out of the 900 attendees of this conference that got anything from him being up there, even if it was because of the fact that they didn't believe him or, you know, in any way, my thinking is it's worth it. If there's any way that it can benefit any of the attendees here, that's important. But now, as we went on in the case, when he came to me 5 months into the case and he said, hey, I'm going to have to leave the operation because I'm going to go back to homicide. Now I'm really worried because he's not going to have an investment in the case. So I immediately took his undercover cell phone, and I said, okay, you're not going to need that anymore since you say you're out. And then I went into the analyst and I said, get in touch with SOD. Let's run the phone numbers. I want to see whether there's any phone communication between those, any Colombian numbers, his home, his cell, his private cells, and see whether or not anything doesn't fit. And what I found was 2 phone calls that had been made from his home phone, hardline phone, that SOD had picked up, that had gone to Latoure's office. And
Was that down in Panama?
no, it was in Colombia. It was in Bogota.
Colombia? Okay.
Yeah. So I went over to Willie and I said, what the hell is going on? And why is there a phone call from your house to Latoure? And he goes, oh man, I remember that. I got nervous that one day. I got nervous and I thought I was using my cell phone, but I used my home phone.
Oh.
But there was nobody in the office, so it was only like a minute or so. And I thought, well, why write a report? Because the guy's secretary answered and said he wasn't in town. So I didn't write a report. Well, I mean, it's not exactly a smoking gun, but it certainly is for me. I know I got a problem.
Yeah, when it's your ass on
And when
the
you s-
line, absolutely.
And when you said it was from his private, you mean his home number or his private number at DEA?
His home number.
So how does a guy get confused whether or not he's on a mobile or a fixed landline?
Yeah, I know.
Well, and that's one of the rules. When you're running these investigations, you don't use your home number.
No.
Oh, hell no. Well, you don't do work from your house, do you? Hey, I'm going to call Pablo Escobar from my home number. Okay.
That's even before cell phones. When I was in Miami, when an informant called, you didn't return the call from your home number. You went
Little
up to a
payphone,
payphone.
Yeah.
something.
You took your little recorder, your little suction cup, and you recorded
I
a phone
remember
call.
that. Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. So, and then there were little things here and there, but what really saved us was that one of the guys in Fort Lauderdale had a non-testifying informant who we all referred to as the Princess, and she was meeting at the highest levels of the Cali cartel. The people that reported directly to Miguel Rodriguez Orjuela.
Mm-hmm.
And she's in the meeting, and in walks one of the money brokers that I had introduced Guzman to, and he starts bragging that they have this Tampa cop who's on the take,
Oh,
and
my
how he
goodness.
saved them because they were otherwise going to do a lot of business with this guy in Sarasota, but he told them that he's a DEA agent. So the problem we have now, though, is she's a non-testifier.
And what does that mean when she's a non-testifier?
Well, an agreement had been made with DEA that she was never going to be purposely surfaced. She would not have to testify. She would not be disclosed as an informant in a case.
Just more like making intros, getting you into the right places.
Yeah. The Fort Lauderdale office was running a money laundering op. Renee Delacova was one of the guys who was in it. And so, okay, we know now, but we can't prove it. So I went to my ASAC and I said, do me a favor, just let me stay under 3 more months. We got to disinformation him. He only met 2 out of like 45 targets. And I didn't want to give up the other 43. So, and I said, and Mike, I know I can definitely talk my way out of this if you'll let me go back to Colombia one more time. He went crazy on me.
Let me see. This guy's trying to out you. They've told you that you're DEA, and now you want to go back to into the jaws of the lion. And oh no, I'll be good. Hold my beer. Watch this.
None of us ever claimed to be hired because we were real smart, okay?
Yeah, well, I mean, I keep going back to the fact that I had this sickness, and my sickness was, information is heroin. And I did not want to give up the opportunity to be able to get what my goals were there. And Mike was right. I should not have gone back, and I didn't. But he did allow me to go back to Panama City. And I had more cover than I used to have before that. But the most important meeting I ever had with him, because I knew he would call me like once a month and go, Bob, hey man, we haven't gotten together. Let's get together. And
When you say him, you're talking about Guzman.
yeah. So he invites me to lunch, and we go to lunch. And I went to my GS on this one, and I said, I need to be wired up. This guy, this is a bad guy. And he goes, he's a cop, I go, I don't care if he's a cop. Anyway, I was not wired when I went back in, and I said to the case agent, Jeff Brunner, I said, Jeff, there's no doubt in my mind what he's really wanting me to go there for will be the last thing he asks me before we leave the table. Because usually when people are having, for a manipulative reason, a meeting, it's like, how do I really fit it in? How do I really fit it in? This is what I really want to know. And it generally comes up right near the end. So he's going into his wallet to pay the bill, and he's looking down, and he goes, hey, did you ever deal with that Latore guy again much? I said, maybe just a little bit here and there. He goes, but when do you guys think you're going to take it down? So I thought he might be asking that, and I knew that there was a World Cup soccer game in Orlando in June of that year. Mm-hmm. We were going to take the case down in February. So I go, man, Willie, you're not going to believe this. We're going to get every one of them, because what we've got tickets to the World Cup games. We're going to set them up in Disney World, and they're all going to come and have a great time, and blah, 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 blah. He took that right back to all of them. Latore's dealing with us again. And then we take the case down in February. And when we did, we had Mike Powers call Willie and say, hey, come on to the office. I need to talk to you. So he comes over to the office, and Mike gives him the line. In about an hour, we're all going to go out for a beer. You really helped on this case a lot, and we're going to celebrate. And by the way, you know that money broker you met? Yeah. He's in Fort Lauderdale. We're going to be arresting his butt tonight. So Willie goes, but yeah, I'm in homicide. I've got all these reports I got to do. I'm not going to be able to go to the party, but thanks anyway. So he gets in his car. We got a chopper up there with a gyro camera, and we've got a surveillance. Paul Pitts is flying a surveillance plane up there, and we got agents from a totally different city in there to do surveillance. Mm-hmm. He goes to a payphone. He goes to another payphone. He goes to another payphone. And then he meets at a Burger King with his informant, one of the informants that had been committing crime with him. Mm. And he goes, man, we got to get in touch with Pedro, because they know he's going to be in Fort Lauderdale. And you got to get your sister to warn him to go away. And so the informant, who was a lot smarter than Willie, goes, why would they tell you all of this stuff? He goes, and they're probably out there watching you right now. So he freaks out. He gets in his car, takes the sunroof back, and he's driving 20 miles an hour on the highway. Then he goes through a Burger King, doesn't buy anything through the drive-through window. He's driving like crazy everywhere, and then he goes home. So he knew, I think, by then. Mike Powers is a great agent, but I'm not so sure undercover's his best thing. So he said later, when we arrested Guzman, he said, Mike was really nervous during that meeting. I knew something was up. No. So anyway, so we didn't arrest him. We gave him a month, and we made cases on both of his informants. We convinced them to cooperate. One of them was not in jail. We got that guy wired up. We gave him a grand jury subpoena, and we had him go back to Guzman and say, agents just came to my house and gave me the subpoena, and they're trying to talk to me about you. What the hell's going on? Well, Guzman had been visited by a defense attorney in town who had a reputation of being close to a lot of organized crime guys. When he met with Guzman in the attorney's car, this is before we get the guy wired up, he turns his radio up. Mm-hmm. He goes to Guzman, because Guzman even admitted this later. He goes, give me $1. Guzman gives him $1. He goes, fine, I'm your lawyer now. So this is privileged. The feds know, and they're coming after you.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's trying to trust the one informant we've got wired up, but every time he gets in the car, he turns the radio up. Mm-hmm. Good lesson from his lawyer. $1 well spent. So, so now we try one more time, and we put the mic in the left lapel of the CI. And luckily for us, Guzman's in the driver's seat. He leans over and he cups his hand right over the mic. And we got him. We absolutely got him. And then I did a financial search warrant. I did a document search warrant on his house, and we took him down, and we got all the documents. And it was clear. There was money all over the place that he couldn't possibly account for.
And that's what your new book is about, right? The Betrayal?
Yeah.
I just got it from you today. I will be reading that on the plane home tomorrow. Looking forward to reading it. And I got to tell you, after you did your presentation, and I missed the sit down you two had. We were doing a full blown interview back here, but I was walking back to the green room, and every uniform officer I went by said that was unbelievable.
That's what I was telling him. The folks doing security here and everything else, they go, that was fucking amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So
good story.
And you know, obviously you handled yourself in a professional manner, which I think is what impressed the hell out of everybody, because most every other cop in here would probably punch that son of a gun out.
You smacked him down in a very elegant way without smacking him down. I mean, you rebutted stuff, but we've only got a few minutes here because we're trying to keep these under 30. But
Sure.
Tell us about the. You've also, hopefully, it sounds potentially maybe have some Hollywood interest in The Betrayal.
Yeah. Amazon Studios bought the film rights from me, and also agreed to have me as one of the producers. Bryan Cranston has gotten a deal with them.
Where have we heard that name before? Bryan
Cranston. No, dude, he's dirty. Dude deals meth. Stay away from him. Yeah.
So we're basically taking the team from The Infiltrator, director Brad Furman. We're going to also try to get John Leguizamo and Benjamin Bratt
that will be
fictionally
interesting.
into it, and do a sequel. But with the writer's strike right now, nobody can touch anything.
Yeah.
And so it has at least 4 or 5 months of work that the screenplay needs. But the good thing is, Amazon Studio, they've got the money, so it's not like they're going to have to go find investors or anything. It'll fly as soon as they're happy with the screenplay.
Sweet, man.
Well, I got to tell you, we can hear that they're coming back from break, so we want to get out and sell books. Capitalism, comrade. That's a great thing.
That's what it's all about.
Hey, well, look, best of luck. Like I said, it was great to meet you in person. Obviously, we did this over video to begin with, but great presentation. And I mean, you guys got to get it. It's called The Betrayal. We'll have it on our book site too. The Betrayal: The True Story of My Brush with Death in the World of Narcos and Launderers by Robert Mazur. Your follow-up book to The Infiltrator, dude. Best of luck. And we'll wait to. You should tell them you want a cameo. You want a cameo in the next.
I might do that.
Yeah,
they were going to. You know, in The Infiltrator, they tried to get me to be the priest at the wedding at the end, and I turned them down.
No, that would have been cool, man.
You got to do a Stephen JP, and even if it's 3 seconds to the end, you got to have a cameo in this.
That's it, brother. All right, toast a beer. Good luck, Bob.
All right,
thanks a lot,
Bob.
guys.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
All right, guys. I mean, what else can we say? We're just going to keep this outro short because we kept you guys a little bit long on the front end. But hey, I mean, what else can you say, Murph? I mean, the stories, nobody hears from them. We got the follow-ups. So, man, great stuff. And we hope you guys enjoyed that.
Yeah, we want to hear from you, our listeners, what you think about this. It's not that we're being repetitive. We just wanted to update you on some of our previous guests on the show who were gracious enough to come back on. We want to say thank you for continuing to support us. We hope we're here another 2 years with you. We're hoping this thing is going to grow. We've got some potential new avenues that we'll talk about later on, but none of this is possible without you. So please, what did you say, Morgan? Tell one, share one.
Yeah, tell one, share one. Let it give everybody the gift of Game of Crimes. And if you want to help us out, go to Apple and Spotify. Hit those 5 stars. Let us know what you think about the show. It's magic. We don't know how it works. We just know it does. Head on over to GameOfCrimesPodcast.com for more information about the show. All of our books on there. And Bob Mazur's new book will be up there. We will put it up there so you'll be able to see some of the updates that are there. Follow us on social media at Game of Crimes on Twitter, Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. Make sure you go to patreon.com/Game of Crimes. Joining us there. And we got great stuff going on. And Game of Crimes fans at Facebook. Our fan group run by Sandy Salvato, our Mafia Queen who rules with the Velvet Glove. Just head on over there and have lots of fun. So, guys, we're going to keep the outro short. But again, it's been 2 years. 104 episodes. We want to thank you guys from the bottom of our heart for being there, for supporting us, for giving us inspiration, and thank all of you for playing the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the 2-year-old Game of Crimes.